just to kick it off, could you kind of tell us how training was and everything? How's the squad doing here?
Everyone's doing well. The sad news, of course, is that Gordon's going through a health crisis right now and is very, very sick. So we miss him immensely in the training room, obviously. But the other seniors have stepped up and they're training very, very well. Nicholas is getting ready for a big match against Matheus Diniz, the ADCC champion. And Giancarlo's got one of the toughest tournaments, I think, of the last 5 years. IBJJF has put together a stellar register of athletes, some of the greatest people in the sport, headlined by Kenan Duarte. He's one of the guys we hold in very, very high regard. He's always been one of the absolute toughest opponents for our team, and he's preparing for that now.
How do you kind of help Giancarlo prepare for a range of opponents like he might find in this GP?
Yeah, it's tricky, and of course it's also complicated by the fact that at any moment someone can pull out and be replaced. So there's a limit on how much you can prepare for the athletes. What you can prepare for, of course, that won't change is going to be the rule set, the time duration, and those things are fixed. The people you go up against, you don't know what the brackets are. There could be late replacements, so that's not fixed. So you make some general assumptions about, okay, it's quite likely this person will be in the finals, or quite likely this person, and you make a few probabilistic assessments, but you can't get too fixated on, you got to prepare for this guy or that guy, because you never know. People can get eliminated that you never thought would be eliminated. Remember, this is a tournament where the least highly regarded person does actually have the tools, if the stars aligned, to remove the most highly regarded person. It's one of those tournaments where the person who's bottom seed could, if everything went right for him and everything went wrong for the other guy, could eliminate the best guy in the tournament. So you don't know who you're going to be facing. So the main thing is to prepare for the rule set and the time duration, and be in the best positive physical shape, and work from there.
So we're basically a week out from that.
Yes.
How's Giancarlo looking?
He looks great. He's in good shape. He's had some injuries over the last 6 months, but seems to be in good shape now. And you saw today he's moving very well. And Giancarlo's thing right now, what his biggest hurdle as a professional athlete is to gain greater consistency in his performances. On his best day, he can beat anyone in the world. But the idea of a great champion is to be able to beat the second best guy on your worst day. That's the Gordon Ryan ideal. Gordon on his worst day will beat the second best guy in the world. I know that seems like an impossible ideal to go towards, but that's what every athlete has to aspire to. And you can't be someone who just beats people on your best day, because a lot of times you go out to compete, it's not your best day. So the ideal is to be able to get that consistency in your performance where you're always shining, as opposed to you have a good tournament here, a good tournament, and then a bad one. It can't be like that. So Giancarlo's fighting to find that consistency, and this is a very, very tough venue to see how he's doing.
So I want to ask you about another guy we saw in the training today, Meregali. Meregali honestly looks like, I feel like I see a new Meregali every time I see him train or compete. He's just constantly progressing. Where do you think Meregali is right now in his no-gi career?
He's still, though you're not going to be happy to hear this, he's still in the early stages of his development. The potential this guy has is remarkable. I've seen people progress quickly, obviously, many times in my career, but this guy is truly exceptional. He's got a game which, if Gordon Ryan, he plays jiu-jitsu like a mathematician. Everything's step by step. Nicholas plays jiu-jitsu like a Mozart, like a musician. There's artistic flourish to what he does. There's an aesthetic element to what he does. His game is just as brutally as effective, but it's also got this artistic quality to it. And he as a person is also very different. He's more intuitive in the way he thinks. He's not like an algorithmic thinker who does things step by step. It's an amazing thing to watch him. And you're absolutely correct. He is, every time you watch him train, it seems like there's some new element to what he's doing. The challenge for me as a coach, of course, is to put interesting projects in front of him. And some of them he rejects, some of them he loves, and he just, over time, he's got this artistic sense of saying, okay, this is my game, this is my game, this is not. And the results are pretty incredible.
So I want to ask you about another member, Davis Asari. We talked a little bit off camera already, but he put together an incredible run at European trials. What did you think about his run there?
I'll say about Davis that if Davis continues at the rate in which he is going, and his mental game can catch up with his physical game, he will be someone who everybody knows about in the jiu-jitsu world. He has a ton of potential. He's highly intelligent, physically very, very impressive fellow who has that combination of supreme physicality with very, very sharp intellectual gifts. For him, he's grown so quickly physically as an athlete that the physical progression has outstripped his own self-assessment of where he is. He still thinks he's the same guy he was 2 years ago. And one day he's going to realize how good he is. And then everyone's going to see a day where, if you were impressed by what you saw at trials, you'll see a day much more impressive than that, I assure you, in the future. He has a lot of potential. But the world doesn't measure people by potential, it measures them by achievement. So I'm going to keep my mouth shut until I'm quietly confident that he's going to go very far in this sport, but I'm going to keep my mouth shut until the day he does, and then I'm going to look at you and I'm going to say, I told you so. No, he's very, very gifted. And that was a fine performance. But he knows, and I know, because I've seen him here in the gym every day, he can do much better than that. You saw a glimpse of David Asari, but you've seen, as it were, the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot of ice underneath that water, and I hope one day the world sees it.
So another new wave member who was in the finals, Hannah Griffith, actually. I feel like she's someone who might be going under the radar. Lou Griffith's sister.
Yes.
What did you think about her performance?
Very impressive. And she actually went into the trials with a pretty severe injury. So even pretty physically compromised, she did very, very well. She's hoping to come back here to resume training, and she did a camp all alone in South Africa, just with her friends, and still did incredibly well. So we're hoping that she'll be able to move over here with Luke and train full time, and I was delighted to see how well she did. But again, potential is one thing, you've got to get those concrete results. And I feel like we have young athletes in the team right now who have a lot of physical gifts, they have incredible potential, but they still aren't aware of how good they are. And so there's a discrepancy between their gym performance and their match performance. And once that starts to even out, you're going to see some very, very interesting athletes emerging from here.
Is that kind of like an interesting task for you as a coach? Like, you like taking on that challenge where you have this new crop coming up?
That to me is the most interesting thing. Everyone knows people I've coached in the past, they know they're good, but you know, there's nothing better than seeing someone start at a relatively low level and then come up in a remarkably short time. Let's look at, for example, Davis Asari and Luke Griffith. The first time I met Luke, he had just lost his first match in trials, and he came to America to do some training, and then the next year won trials. Davis Asari, same situation. He lost his first match in trials in a matter of seconds, and then interestingly a year later defeated the very same person who was one of the favorites in trials. So you see this incredibly fast progress, and it's gratifying to see. You see these kids work so hard. They have big dreams, but the work and the road is a long, hard road, and so when they get a chance to shine and flourish, it's great. And that's one of the great pleasures of the job.
I know all roads kind of ultimately are heading towards the 2024 ADCC World Championship. Have you gave much thought in what that's going to be like for the team?
It's going to be big, not just for the team, but for the sport in general. I think Mo Jassen's done an incredible job getting a venue which befits the growing status of the sport. There's so many tough teams going in it. Like, everybody's good. You know, look at the various trials. You look at Asian trials, you look at European trials, there's people there that I don't even know who they are, and you look at them, they're amazing. Like, the standards are just getting so good now. Look at last ADCC, where trials winners were regularly beating established veterans and champions of the sport. The game's changing rapidly, and everybody's good, everybody's tough, every team's well versed. They're all very, very good. So I think it's going to be a colossal ADCC, and we're still focused on the idea of getting people in. Trials still have to be run, so it'll be later in the year that the actual focus on the World Championship itself kicks in. Right now it's about, there's other things to be taken care of, but you're absolutely right. The biggest event of the year by far will be 2024 ADCC.